Hi, I'm Mike Taylor, Minister of Churnside, Wentworth, Hutton, Fishick and Paxton Parish Church in the Scottish Borders. A few days ago we celebrated Christmas, and more people are starting to ask, what is the actual date of Christmas? Should it be the 25th of December? Should it be the 6th of January? Should it be some date in September? What would make more sense? And the truth is, we don't know the actual date of the birth of Jesus. We make our best guess and we go with traditions that have been around for a long time, but we don't know. And so I've been pondering over the last few days, what is the date of Christmas for us? On the 26th of January, I woke up to the news that an African man of 90 years of age, Mpilo and Tutu, had passed away. And it was a sad event. When was Christmas for him? Well, I think it was a day when he was about 6 or 7 years old. He was walking through a township called Sophia Town. It was a place where loads of black African people lived. And it was poor, it was rough. And walking down the road with his mother, he saw a white man in a clerical collar walking towards him. And he had already been taught racism. He had already been taught deference. He already knew that when a white man walked up, you crossed to the other side of the street, you made space, you didn't catch his eye, you gave way, you kowtowed. And so it was with great surprise for Mpilo Tutu that day, as this white man approached, that this white man lifted his hat and he greeted his mother. And this white man said, "Good day, ma'am," and carried on walking by. And in his face was kindness, was love. And Mpilo Tutu looked at that event and he said, I want to know the God that can make a white man treat a black woman with such dignity and respect. I want to know the God of that man, and I want to serve that God. And he did. He went on to follow Jesus for his entire life. But not only did he follow Jesus his entire life, but he also gave his life to bring the world that Jesus dreamt of, that Jesus came to give us. So what was the date of Christmas Day for Mpilo Tutu? The date for him was whatever that day was, that he met Jesus in the face of a man who he would generally think of as his oppressor. It's alarming that when I was a young man in my 17, 18-year-old, around about that age, I was in the army. And Mpilo Tutu had become such a legend, such a huge figure on the stage of South African politics, that we used to sing songs about him. They were songs to indoctrinate us, that if we had the chance, that we would kill him. He had shaped the narrative, the discourse in South Africa so much. My grandmother was a very involved Christian, and I remember sitting with her and her warning me about this man, Mpilo Tutu, how he was a liberation theologian. My grandmother said that if Tutu had his way, Christians would walk around with AK-47s and shoot white people in the street. And so I learned as a child and as a teenager to hate this man who I'd never met, in a way to fear this man and what he stood for, even though it was a misrepresentation. You see, Mpilo Tutu, who we know as Desmond Tutu, stepped onto the world stage as he argued for equality, while others who were opposing apartheid, the segregation, fled to other countries. Mpilo Tutu stayed in South Africa he spoke, and he spoke loud, and he spoke freely. And he challenged any theology that said a white person is better than a black person, that any person is better than another. He said every person bears the image of the God who created us. And so when we mistreat any person, when we are rude to someone, when we take advantage of them because they are lower in society than us, because they are financially not as strong as us, because they are a different gender to us, then that is equivalent to spitting in the face of God. Because the image of God is carried in every single human being. And so that was the primary message that Tutu brought to the world. When things changed in South Africa, Tutu changed his role as well. Rather than being the eternal revolutionary that breaks and tears down and destroys, Bishop Desmond Tutu came to lead the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and he led that commission on very sound theological principles. He says there is no forgiveness without truth. And so there can be no reconciliation without the truth first being told. And so at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there were mothers whose sons had been carried off in the middle of the night, and they never knew what happened to them. Had they been murdered and buried somewhere? Had they been tortured? What had happened to their sons and their daughters? And so the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for years sat and heard the stories of policemen and army officers who had captured people who they considered to be terrorists, to be rebels, to be stirring up the trouble. And how often these people were taken off into woodlands, tortured, killed and buried in unmarked graves, never to be found again. Tears flowed for years. And Desmond Tutu led people in that process of truth-telling and asking for forgiveness. He not only set the mothers and the fathers free who had lost their children, but he also gave hope to those who had murdered, who had killed, who had buried. He gave some hope to them that there could be a new beginning. Desmond Tutu has also been known for so many other achievements. When the government in South Africa changed, he didn't sit quietly in a corner and say, well, that's it, job done. When the South African government became corrupt and showed their corruption, Desmond Tutu challenged that new government. He challenged the government that he had put in place. He challenged the government and he said to them, as we prayed that God would remove the white racist government, if you do not reform your ways, we will pray for God to remove you too. There's a story of Desmond Tutu speaking to the UN, and he tells the story of the president of South Africa, who was notoriously corrupt, who meets with a Zambian minister. And the Zambian parliamentary minister greets him, and the president of South Africa says, well, what is your portfolio? And he says, well, I am the Minister of Naval Affairs. If you know your geography, you will know that Zambia is a landlocked country. And so Jacob Zuma laughed at him and said to him, "That is so silly. You're a landlocked country. You don't even have an ocean border. And so why on earth would you have a navy? You don't have a sea and you don't have a navy, so why do you have a minister of naval affairs?" And the joke goes that the Zambian minister of naval affairs said, "Well, that's the same question we ask. Why does South Africa have a minister of justice?" Bishop Desmond Tutu also stood against the culture of many South Africans when he advocated the rights of same-sex couples, and holding true to his belief that all people are born equal and every single person carries the image of God. Mpilo Tutu argued that people who are in same-sex relationships, people who are homosexual, people who are transsexual, people who are bisexual, should have the same liberties and freedoms as every other person to explore love, to find love, to give love, and to receive love. And in one noteworthy speech, he says that there is the perception that the God of Christianity will send to hell those who participate in same-sex relationships. And he says that because of his stance on same-sex relationships, he stands with those who would be condemned by such a God. And if it means that he too would be sent to hell for his stance on same-sex relationships, he would accept that gladly, because he would not want to be in a heaven with a God who hates people because of who they love. A very bold statement by Mpilo Tutu. When there was still segregation in South Africa, black clergy were educated in poor seminaries with very low standard Christian education. Potential white ministers went to the best of universities. They had the best professors teaching them all their subjects. And Tutu said to the churches, how on earth can we stand against apartheid in government, segregation in government, segregation in economic, segregation in society, when we ourselves are segregating in the way we train people? And so, following on a model from Guatemala, Desmond Tutu established Theological Education by Extension College in South Africa, which was a correspondence college which used tutors wherever people were. He was also instrumental in establishing FedSem College, a residential college where black and white students resided together, studied together, learned together, and learned how to understand and love each other. In the years after apartheid was abolished in South Africa, FedSem College closed, and other universities invited people of all nations, races, into study. But TEE College continued. Desmond Tutu's dream was that people could receive quality education wherever they came from. And so there became a policy of offering lower education for those who had come from a background where they hadn't had proper schooling. And this became known as deficit education. Universities started offering degrees that were at a lower standard, diplomas that were at a lower standard. And those in the workplace, those in the church, came to know that these were deficit degrees. I had the privilege of working in the college established by Desmond Tutu. I had the privilege of working in a college which had been established by, I think, 6 churches, 6 different denominations that he pulled together: Roman Catholic, Anglican, Presbyterian, Congregationalist, Methodist. He pulled them together to work for a common cause. When I worked there, we were serving 28 different denominations, 3,400 students per year. The temptation was to make it easier for people to get into roles in the church that they were seeking, to make the assignments easier and the exams easier. But that would actually lead to a church which was more fragile, less educated, less robust, less able to face the questions and challenges of the world. And so, following on from Desmond Tutu's equality policy, I worked very hard to build steps that every student who came to TEE College would be able to take the steps they needed, and by the time they graduated, they would all be on the same level, and they would all graduate with a qualification that was worth something, that prepared them for the church role, the ministry they were going into. A few days ago, Bishop Desmond Tutu was like a tree that fell. A tree that could have been cut down any time in his 90 years. He was bold, he was brave, he was on watch lists, and there was always the risk that someone was going to kill him before his time. By the grace of God, he was able to live his full life and die of natural causes. By the grace of God, he is a tree that was not cut down, but a tree that fell naturally. And his memory and his legacy will continue. But to come back to where I began, for Desmond Tutu, Christmas Day, the day that Jesus was born into his life, was a day when a man who had a lot of power, a lot of privilege, who could have made his life hell on earth, showed love and respect to a mother walking along a pavement. And that showing of Christ transformed not only the life of Desmond Tutu, but transformed the lives of over 50 million South Africans, and continues to transform the lives of South Africans, and has also transformed the lives of people across the world who have been touched by his example, by his message. So, when is Christmas Day for you? Has Christ been born in you, or are you still living and waiting? Has Christ been born in you to transform you, to make you new, to make you a new creation? Have you been born from above, is the words used in John? Because the birth of Christ is not just the birth of God on earth. The birth of Christ is the rebirth of each of us into a new creation. Has Christ been born in you, or are you still waiting for your first Christmas? Has Christ been born in you that you no longer treat people as you used to, but you treat them with love and compassion? Has Christ been born in you that you treat people with respect, seeing in every single person the God whom we serve? as we prepare to go into 2022. If you have not encountered Christ in your first Christmas, may I encourage you to find some quiet time to sit alone. Maybe to say, Jesus, I want to know you. Jesus, I want you to be my God. I want you to be my friend. I want you to make me new. Jesus, please be born in me, that I can be born anew today. May God's grace, may God's love, may God's compassion and empathy fill you today and always. May you see in the mirror the image of the living God. May you never let anyone treat you badly because you think you're not worth it. May you know that God came to earth to get to know you. And may you also see in every person you meet the image of God. And as we show kindness and respect and love, may we know that we are worshiping the God who first loved us. God bless you.